is that it increases body composition. One of the things that we measure at the clinic is percent muscle to fat. So when you step on a scale, you don't know what percent of that weight is actually muscle and what percent of that is fat. And so what happens is during Ramadan, while you're fasting for that 14 to 16 hours, you actually burn off fat. It seems, how can this possibly happen when you're not working out? It's interesting, the fat cells actually start to shrink up, muscle mass goes up, and fat mass goes down. The 10 benefits of fasting that I want to highlight are as follows. It protects against neurodegenerative diseases. As I said, it increases brain growth neurotrophic factor. Insulin levels drop. And the slide that I skipped over, the one with the cookie, when you eat a cookie, what happens is your blood sugar goes up, your pancreas releases insulin to bring that sugar down. And you get these spikes every time you eat this cookie. And when insulin goes up, the body actually holds on to fat. And when it holds on to fat, it makes it harder for it to go away. What Ramadan, during the 13 to 14 hours of fasting, that actually stabilizes where you don't get that insulin spike. And instead what happens is the insulin is actually more appropriately regulated and you don't need as much insulin to bring blood sugar down. It increases, so basically what I'm trying to say with that specifically is that for diabetics specifically, what we see is that you can, for people that are newly diagnosed or patients that have moderate glycemic control issues, fasting is actually of huge benefit in terms of regulating the glycemic response. Reducing risk of heart disease by improving those cholesterol markers that we were talking about, and by reducing C-reactive protein. Reducing blood sugar and blood pressure levels. There's two parts of the nervous system, the parasympathetic part and the sympathetic. The parasympathetic is responsible for more the calming, relaxed part of the nervous system, whereas the sympathetic nervous system is more that flight and fight response state. So when you're walking across and you don't see a car coming and all of a sudden it's in front of you, that sort of flight or fight state is more in the sympathetic state. When you fast for 14 hours, it actually increases that parasympathetic. Your body actually becomes more relaxed into that relaxed state. And what happens is we find that actually blood pressure numbers start to reduce as well. Over here, we can see some markers in terms of heart disease and cholesterol, up to 32% reduction, triglycerides, 42% reduction. This was done on a study of 400 patients fasting for 12 to 14 hours for 30 days. And as I mentioned, pancreas doesn't have to release as much insulin to bring blood sugar down. Liver, detoxification, all the cells that govern detoxification, they also ramp up to detoxify the cells in the body. Skin health also improves. It's interesting, they've actually done studies to show that you actually have a glow. After fasting for 16 hours, there's a certain glow to your skin. And the bacteria on the surface of your skin actually changes. So you have this glow to your skin. And also what happens, as I mentioned, with that gut bacteria changing, it also helps with that skin glow. For patients or people with acne, it actually reduces an inflammatory response that governs acne. And also, because of that gut bacteria change, it also improves, it improves acne as well. One of the things that I sort of didn't get into was the psychological impacts of fasting. And there's several benefits. And one of the biggest things is by decreasing inflammation in the body and by increasing that parasympathetic, that more relaxed state, you're able to focus and concentrate more. It seems counterintuitive. It seems like, when you're studying for exams and you want to grab those snacks, after about 3 or 4 days of fasting, what happens is your focus and your concentration actually improves. And I can attest to this. During the first week or so of Ramzan, things can be a little bit tough. Towards the end, focusing at work, concentration, for me personally, it does improve in middle of the afternoon. Those who may feel tired from like 2 to 4 p.m., they have a little bit more of an energy spike. So we have been prescribed to read Quran as much as we can during this month. And obviously, because of our ability to focus and concentrate more during the day, it's one of the reasons why we've been prescribed to do so, because we have the ability to focus and concentrate. I wanted to end the talk just with a quote from Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam. When you fast, your ears, eyes, hair, skin, and all your limbs should also fast. He also said, fasting is not only abstaining from food and drink alone. When you fast, protect your tongue from lying. Lower your eye glances from Allah, what Allah has forbidden. Do not fight with one another. Do not be jealous of one another. Do not backbite one another. Do not abuse one another, and do not be unjust to one another. Refrain from false accusation, lying, fighting, suspicion, backbiting, and slandering. Be those who look forward to the hereafter and wait for your days, waiting for what Allah has promised for those who have prepared to meet Allah. You must have tranquility, sobriety, humility, servility, and submissiveness of a slave who fears his master, and be fearful of Allah's chastisement, as well as hopeful for his forgiveness. On that, I wanted to end with a loud salawat from the Mu'mineen. And a Surah Fatiha for all of our mahrumeen who have gathered here today.
Has any effect on sleep pattern or sleeping disorders?
Good question. So there are actually studies on fasting and sleeping. Sure, the question was, is there any effect on sleep patterns and fasting? There is actually literature on that, and what they find is that adults actually benefit more. I just read it this afternoon. Adults benefit more than children do when it comes to sleep. So promotion of quality restful sleep increases. So it's quite interesting because you get into more of that deeper sleep during Ramzan, even though with a lot of us, we may not be sleeping as much, but you're getting into a more deep, restful state of sleep when you fast during the day. And it's more profound in adults. The study was done on comparing children with sleep issues and with adults with sleep issues. And they found that adults were more positively affected. Not that children were negatively affected by it, but adults had more of a positive effect.
Sometimes we get drowsy around 1:30, 2 p.m. So regardless of fasting or not fasting. So does it improve with the fasting?
With fasting, it definitely improves. So the middle of the afternoon sort of lull after 4 days of fasting, focusing and concentration improves. So there's a lot of literature to support that. It depends what your lull is. If you've had that lull even before fasting, and it's something that you experience, there could be other issues associated with it. As I mentioned, blood sugar regulation improves during fasting, so you don't get those insulin sort of spikes, which causes you to feel fatigued. So in middle of the afternoon, we find that patients generally improve after 4 days in terms of their focusing and their concentration. The other thing that I didn't mention in the talk is sort of our diet changes. And I tell people that fast, you shouldn't really change your diet for the worse, during fasting. No disrespect to any food, any culture, any samosa out there, but we should be eating a healthy diet. And someone had asked, what do you suggest? And for me, generally what we try and do at home is basically we'll have maybe an egg, maybe some sort of dal or some sort of protein, and then drink a good amount of water, maybe 3 to 4 glasses. And then after iftar, you're trying to get your water intake, again, 3 to 4 glasses at least. But if you have a good source of protein, that will also help with that sort of middle of the afternoon kind of lull in the morning. Any other questions?
Is it good to work out along with that?
Yeah, I mean, for you, for sure. For younger people, definitely important to work out. Definitely the fat burning stage, where you want to hit that, is just before breaking your fast. So, I mean, we have lots of du'as and obviously namaz and all that, but in through the evening time, if you can go for a 15, 20-minute walk, very important. Even more important after you break your fast. After you break your fast, you're feeling bloated, you're feeling a little bit sluggish. That is the best time to be sort of going for a little bit of a walk to help with that. But in terms of fat burning, it's a good time just kind of right before breaking your fast, so in the evening.
How about muscle building?
Yeah, so muscle building, interesting. There's a, can't remember the factor, but your growth of muscle actually improves by fasting without changing your diet. So whatever your nutrient intake was before fasting, months leading up to it, and if you keep that same nutrient intake during the fast, your muscle will actually start to build. And it's interesting, we have a tool at the clinic where we use to measure muscle to fat ratio, and I'll have people work out the same or even less, and their muscle mass actually increases during Ramadan. In terms of lifting weights, absolutely same time. In the evening is the best time. Yes.
For those who are kind of addicted to caffeine and all,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning, it tends to give them a really bad headache
Yeah.
throughout the day. So what suggestions do you give so that we can reduce that headache?
So the question was on caffeine consumption and how to get rid of that addiction. I'm one of those people. So leading up, like in this week, I just quit caffeine. So about 3 days ago, I stopped drinking coffee. So I had a headache. I was also fasting, which also is harder. But I think the week prior, at least, if you're going to, let's say if you're addicted to sugar or there's a snack you need to have middle of the afternoon or coffee, quitting it cold turkey, there's an immunoglobulin that's actually released from drinking coffee, and it actually disappears after 4 days of not consuming it. So and we find that with patients that quit coffee, within 4 days, typically their headaches and sort of that brain fog improves. I still have mine, so you may have been able to tell with the presentation, but yeah, but it gets better. Yes, Sajad.
Oh, sir. So you mentioned many advantages of fasting.
Yes.
health and spiritually healed. So what are disadvantages on health?
You know what? That's a good question. So I actually went to PubMed, which is a collection of research data on medical literature, and I inputted the negative effects of fasting, and specifically during Ramzan. The only thing that I found is that in the Middle East, there was a study that was done, and they did a study on the negative effects. And what they found was more car accidents. And that this is legitimately true. You can actually take a look, and it was one of those things. If you're following the rules that we've been prescribed in terms of, if you're healthy, if you have no underlying serious disorders, if you're traveling, as long as you follow that structured rule, you're good. Like I really don't think there are any negative effects for a healthy individual to be fasting. So yeah. Yeah.
We need designated drivers.
No, I don't know. We might.
Maybe those accidents are near Maghrib time.
It would be interesting. Maybe they are near Maghrib time because, yeah.
Because in their rule, it's the fasting becomes makruh if it's delayed.
Right. So maybe I'll
It's
take.
also because it's near Maghrib, and everyone's just trying to rush home, so they're overspeeding just to get there.
That's probably the case. So yeah. So it could be. Ahmed Bhai?
How come lake of water has no effect during Ramadan?
How come which of water?
Lake of water, we're not drinking water, yeah, during fasting,
Right.
so it doesn't have any health effect?
Like a negative effect? No. So in fact, if you abstain from water for 14 hours, it actually, the organs literally, they do kind of shrink up and they shrivel up a bit and they release toxins out of the body, liver especially. And there's lots of studies to support liver enzymes decrease. There's an enzyme called ALT that decreases significantly, and these enzymes are only increased in a state of inflammation or toxicity, and those enzymes actually decrease with dehydration. So during the day, we're rehydrating at night. The other thing that I tell my non-Muslim colleagues is that, right now, intermittent fasting is, kind of all the rage. And they'll use their sleep time as their fasting period, and we're not. So we're just shifting that clock in a different direction. And then they're like, oh, you're right, you're kind of doing the same thing, because while they're sleeping, they're not drinking water. And they include that sleep part of the sleep part, hours of sleep as a part of their fasting period. But in fact, the net result of not consuming water for that 14 to 16 hour period is more beneficial than not. And the other thing is, you don't want to wake up in the morning and not drink water, or it's important to drink water. So it's important to drink a good amount of water in the morning. So, no problem. Yeah, no problem.
Just one more.
One more question.
With water, do you think it'd be beneficial to add electrolyte supplements with the water, or do they separate?
Good question on electrolytes. So I've never actually done that where I've added electrolytes. I'm thinking of this Ramzan just to try it and see what happens. I also believe that we shouldn't be, tweaking our diet to kind of cheat the system in a way as well. Eating a banana is fantastic first thing in the morning as well. So you're going to get some benefit to that. There are different electrolyte supplements out there and it is beneficial to add that into your water. BioSteel is a good, I shouldn't be mentioning names, but BioSteel is a neat little brand out there. And I would recommend, if they say a scoop, just do a quarter of a scoop. All right, salawat per Muhammad and wa ala Muhammad.